Thousands of people gathered in front of the Berlin Schloss. It was the first day of August, 1914. Their Kaiser came out on the balcony and told them that they were going to war. Thank God, the crowd cheered. Turn around, the Kaiser built you a church. It's overflowing with ornament, like a heart full of faith in the fatherland. Well, even the socialists were for the war. After all, it was Germany above all. At least they'll be settled. We'll crush them on all fronts. The boys will be back by Christmas. First Christmas, second Christmas, and the boys were dead, and those who lived in hell in the trenches. Cheer up, look, we put a sign on the Reichstag that says, to the German people, third Christmas, fourth Christmas. In Berlin, they waited for good news. After all, the goddess of victory was still on the victory column and on the Brandenburg Gate. No enemy marched through Unter den Linden ready to loot and humiliate. Instead, they got turnips for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the flu, and letters saying that their loved ones were dead. Their minds were rubble, even though the buildings around them stood as they did 4 Christmases ago. This defeat left them nothing to rebuild. The only thing left was to tear down. Kaiser had to go, that was clear. And the generals? They're waiting for people to forget that it was their fault. So, who's left? The socialists, of course. Social Democratic Party of Germany, the SPD, was the largest party in existence, and they could now do what they wanted with the country, like make it into a republic and a democracy. But the socialists didn't get through the war without a crack. A piece had fallen off, a group of radicals that called themselves the Spartacus. They wanted a real revolution, like the Russians had last year. After all, the people were angry, and their minds were rubble. One day in November, they gathered around the Schloss like in the good old days, but there was no Kaiser there anymore to come out on the balcony. The crowds marched through Unter den Linden and to the Reichstag building. The Reichstag was now full of social democrats. They were having lunch at the canteen, while rumors got around that the Spartacus was on the street, stirring the crowds in radical directions. It was enough to spoil social democrats' desserts. Philipp Scheidemann couldn't take it anymore. He had to do something. He opened the window of the Reichstag and proclaimed to the crowd that they were now a republic. Thank God, the crowd cheered. Is this a revolution? Turn around. There's still a crowd around the Schloss, and someone's on the balcony. It's Karl Liebknecht, the leader of the Spartacus, and he's proclaiming the free socialist republic. The crowds cheered. Revolution, indeed. So, what kind of republic will it be? The generals trembled. The SPD Republic or the Socialist Republic of the Spartacus. 2 evils, but one was worse. So, a general decided to give a call to the Reichstag. We have the Freikorps, units of loyal soldiers who don't know what to do with themselves in peace, and we could put them at your service to bring order to the streets. In return, you'll leave the army to us. Deal? And now what? They shot Liebknecht in the Tiergarten, dumped Rosa Luxemburg's body in the Landwehr Canal. And this was just the beginning. But do not despair. There's still hope for the Republic. There's still architecture. Yes, architecture. It's a matter of life and death. An apartment can kill, people say, but then it can also bring to life. The politicians have compromised, what could one expect? But the architects aren't going to compromise. They'll do what the politicians didn't have the guts to do. They'll tear down the old city of stone, down to the last statue, and they'll build a better one. In their minds, it already happened. All those arches, impediments, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, crumbled into dust. Mix in some water and cement and you can make whatever you want. Like smooth white walls. Walls so undecorated that they become decoration. A new style that looks like progress, equality, and revolution. And our revolution will go all the way. Down with false fronts. One look at a building and it should be clear what goes on inside. Transparency. Make everything out of glass. Like the glass house that Bruno Taut built just before the war. Taut's glass house was actually an exhibition for people to see what German industry can do with glass. But Taut wanted people to see what architecture can do with their lives. Light will shine through colorful glass tiles and into eyeballs full of dust and stone. And maybe they'll see what Taut sees, a world in which they all live together in peace, in colorful houses with gardens. Like these houses that Taut built in a suburb just outside Berlin. But then the war broke out, and Taut's not in the crowd. He lights cigarette after cigarette and takes deep breaths. To be a worthless piece of shrapnel in the guns of the greedy ones. No thanks. Taut coughs, and he's unfit for the army, but he still had to work in the war economy, and he coped by dreaming up a perfect city to be built in peacetime. A city where everyone lives in colorful houses with gardens. And what about the crowd? Where will people gather? In the city center, like they always do. Taut called the center of his perfect city the city crown. He put so many meeting halls in it, it'd be impossible not to meet up. And in the very center, hovering above it all, will be a magnificent building of colored glass. A building so lofty that it'd be above usefulness. It's there to let the light shine through it and reflect to the people inside their highest thoughts. And how high can we think? The higher the thoughts, the greater the building. And the higher the building, the closer to heaven. And what about those high buildings, 10, 20 stories, like in Chicago? Why not in Berlin? Fill the entire city center with these things. Let's start with this site in Friedrichstraße. We'll hold a competition and go crazy. There's no money for it anyway. A young architect called Mies van der Rohe designed a skyscraper held up by a core of steel and concrete. And everything else was glass. It was like the city crown skyscraper. Skin and bones, almost nothing, said the architect, but it was too much for the jury. His fellow revolutionaries saw it for what it was, though. A crystal prophecy. And what does the crystal ball have to say about Berlin's main street, Unter den Linden? Let's hold a competition. A young architect called Van Esteren said, "It's obvious. Tear the street down and rebuild it. 40-meter towers on one side and a long block on the other. A couple of skyscrapers, and there you have it." But wait. Maybe we shouldn't build so high after all. There'll be even more people and traffic, and it's already so crowded in the city center. But that's why you need high-rises in the city center. To make space for everyone. After all, there's a housing shortage, 200,000 people in need of a home. So bring in the wrecking balls already. It's time to build. For real. There's money. Lots of loans from Americans. So that Germany can pay reparations to France and Britain, so that France and Britain can pay back war debts to Americans. But who cares? There's real money now, not worthless pieces of paper. Blank slates on which you can draw up the world the way you'd like it to be. And what do you do with it? It's worthless if it stays on paper. But it's the paperwork that makes the world go around. A piece of paper can, in fact, be mightier than 1,000 bulldozers. Look at Berlin. There's no need to tear the city down and build high-rises to solve the housing shortage. There's plenty of space in Berlin. Yes, a few years ago, Berlin was Europe's most notoriously overcrowded city of 2 million people. But now, Berlin is a city of 4 million, and it is the least densely populated in all of Europe. A piece of paper can do this sort of thing. 148 votes against, 164 votes for, and a piece of paper becomes law. A law that created a new city. And this new city was Berlin. Greater Berlin. It included the Berlin from before, plus 7 towns around it, plus 59 villages, plus 27 estates. And now, this huge area could be planned as one city, with lots and lots of empty land all around. Blank slates on the edges on which a better world can be built without having to tear down the old. And it's time to build. And nothing's mightier than a city whose time has come. The Republic made it, it seems. It made space for it. A good dose of liberty, fraternity, and das Kapital. Congratulations, the golden age has dawned. Gold, on its own, won't be enough though. They had lots of it before the war, and what did they build with it? They let it loose on the city, let it do what it pleased. They gave it out as cheap loans to developers, and they sold them narrow plots of land. And the developers crammed the land with buildings to squeeze out as many rents as possible. At the front, large apartments for the well-to-do look out to the wide streets. At the back, families in one-room apartments look out to the tiny courtyards on which the sun never shines. People call these buildings the rental barracks, and they said that an apartment can kill like a slow-acting poison that dulls the mind. So how about we change the building code? Ban the tiny courtyards, make it illegal to cover the entire plot with buildings like that. And the landlords of rental barracks, they paid off their loans with worthless money during the hyperinflation. So how about they pay taxes now, and then the city can use the taxes to build housing? Doesn't the new constitution promise healthy homes for all? But how do you turn taxes into healthy homes? Not for profit. Profit built the rental barracks. So we need people who don't care for profits, but want healthy homes to join together to build more effectively. It's a non-profit housing cooperative. People already set these up before the war, but they were small. To make a difference, big organizations have to set them up, like the city government and the trades unions. They have to become big, non-profit housing associations with friendly bureaucratic acronyms like DGVO and GEHAG. Private developers, beware. There was an architect behind all of this. His name was Martin Wagner. But Wagner wasn't just an architect. He was a social democrat, a member of the SPD. While his colleagues dreamed about city crowns, Wagner dreamed about a construction industry that wasn't driven by profits. He pushed for the rent tax, and he pushed the socialist trade unions to set up the GEHAG, and he pushed himself into a position of power in city government, a chief planner for the entire city of Greater Berlin. And the city has collected taxes, and they'll give them out as subsidies to non-profit housing associations. And they'll sell them big plots of that cheap empty land on the edges of Greater Berlin. And the housing associations will build the Siedlungen, large public housing estates with enough fresh air and sunshine for all. But they'll have to build very cheap, so that the workers with lowest pay can afford the rent. But everything's getting cheaper. It's because of mass production. Why not in buildings? It's all just boxes anyways. Break them down into parts, mass produce them in factories, and stack them up on site. And those smooth walls of revolutionary architects are perfect for this. And Wagner knew the man, a man who knew what utopia looked like. It was Bruno Taut. Wagner got him a job as the chief architect for the GEHAG, and if anyone in Berlin could build a utopia, it was the GEHAG. It had to be all standardized and as cheap as possible, of course. No city crown of shimmering glass. But there's a pond on site, and around the pond, gardens. And around those gardens, more gardens. And around those gardens, a 350-meter-long building curves into a horseshoe. The horseshoe is for the most part made up of the same 54-square-meter apartment, mirrored across the hall, and then 3 floors of this, 6 apartments per entrance, repeated again and again. But that's the point. Standardization, mass production, and everybody's supposed to be equal, right? Besides, this is the good life. Trees and gardens all around, and you've got windows on 2 sides to catch the fresh air and sunshine. And you've got your own bathroom and kitchen, and the kitchen's not in the living room, and it opens onto a balcony, painted sky blue. This was heaven. And the horseshoe is just a part of this Siedlung. Around the horseshoe are houses, long rows of colorful family houses with gardens. Red ones, blue ones, yellow ones, and white ones. Not too many white ones, though. Taut never got why his colleagues kept painting everything white. This is no Greece. White tends to be gray in Berlin, and paint is cheap, and it brightens the neighborhood, especially when everyone's house is the same. And these colorful houses are fortified by 3-story apartment blocks along main streets. These are the same kind of buildings as the horseshoe, with the same apartment, 6 apartments per entrance, repeated again and again, but Taut came up with a different look for this one. In the horseshoe, the part with the entrance and the stairs is cut into the building, while here it pokes out, creating these tower-like structures which make the building look like a wall of a fortress. Taut wanted this one painted red. The red front, people said. And what's the red front on guard from? Look across the street. There are 3-story apartment blocks again, but these have these big roofs and shutters on the first floor. And is this an arch? And the houses behind them, if you squint, it's almost like a picturesque village. But it was built at the same time as the horseshoe. Everyone liked fresh air and sunshine, it turned out. But not everyone liked the new style of architecture. So the city sold the land of the old Brits estate to 2 housing associations. The land on the left went to the socialist Gehag, and the land on the right went to the conservative De Gevaux. And each built their own housing. One pretended to be from the future, the other pretended to be from the past. So pick what you like. It's a democracy. But not if you're a worker with low pay, because you won't be able to afford the rent. Even in the horseshoe, though it tried hard to look machine-made, they needed people to build, not machines, because people needed work to pay the rent. So it was brick by brick behind those smooth walls, and it wasn't as cheap as they hoped. More and more people could afford it, though. Skilled workers, merchants, civil servants. The progressive ones could move into the horseshoe, and those more conservative across the street. Utopia, indeed. But Taut was converting people to the new style, and the Gehag was big. They were building Siedlungen all around the city. They got their hands on a piece of land on the edge of the Grunewald forest. Only the rich in grand villas lived in this part of town. It bothered them that the Gehag was going to build here. They'd had to share the forest with the Siedlung of commoners. And they'll bring public transport, a new U-Bahn station in the middle of the site, a modern one with shops. Tracks cut into the ground, cut the site in half, and the Gehag gets to build housing on both sides of the tracks. Martin Wagner smirked and ordered the works to begin. Taut had the plan ready. He carefully laid out the streets to keep as many pine trees as possible. Around the station and along the tracks are apartment blocks. It's those buildings with the same apartment again and again, but Taut never ran out of ways to make these fun. He liked to put different designs on 2 sides of the street. On one side, the building is a smooth plane. Across the road, each part of the building is its own cube. It's new and exciting, like equality. And equality comes in a full spectrum of colors. Paint the western sides of houses red, and paint the eastern sides of houses green. And you have a red-green street. Colorful family houses with gardens at the back. The dream. North-south streets. Windows east for the sunrise and windows west for the sunset. And all those apartment buildings along the tracks and Main Street to protect them from the noise. And there are more houses like this on the other side of the tracks. These were designed by Taut and 2 other architects. Each architect designed a house, and then they built long rows of that house towards the park in the south. It's like those houses around the horseshoe, except the tout actually put pitched roofs on those houses. Not anymore. They all used flat roofs now. Flat roofs made houses look modern. It was part of the new style. But it's not a style, said the architects. We're trying to build as cheap as possible around here to give the good life to everyone. And flat roofs are cheaper and easier to build, and they don't waste space. Under the flat roof, you get an entire new floor instead of a cramped triangular attic. But what about when it leaks? Said the other side. People have been building houses for centuries, and around here it rains and snows a lot, so people built houses with pitched roofs. That's the GAGFAH on the other side, another housing association, and GAGFAH is building houses, and they're blocking the view to the park. Perfect middle-class homes, they say, so perfect. There'll be an exhibition right here across the street from the flat roofs of the Gehag. People can come and see for themselves. GAGFAH invited architects from all over Germany to design perfect housing specimens. They had one condition: to put pitched roofs on all houses. Ouch. People came and saw and said that there's a roof war in the city. The commander of the pitched roof regiment was Heinrich Tessener. He didn't mean to declare war. He wanted to solve the housing crisis, just like Tout and the flat roofers were doing across the street. Tessener agreed with them on a lot of things. Gardens, fresh air and sunshine, smooth walls, and forms that follow function. But Tessener didn't want to start from the blank slate. He wanted a perfect German house, not to copy it, but to distill it to its essence, to adapt it to modern life and make it available to everyone. But the flat roofers wanted nothing to do with the old house. The old house was a bad habit that kept them from building a better world. This is a metropolis in the 20th century, and if a house looks like a house, something's wrong. That old house is stuck in your mind and you can't rationally solve the housing problem of the modern city. But how can we solve the housing problem of the modern city without the wisdom of the old house? If a house looks the same everywhere in the world, something's wrong. The wisdom of the old house is the wisdom about how people learned to live on this particular land, how they shaped it, and how it shaped them. Meanwhile, an architecture student at the Technical University was doubting himself. Architecture wasn't for him. He chose it because his father was an architect. But then he went to Professor Tessener's class, and everything made sense. You don't have to stare at a blank slate. You have a tradition. Draw upon it. Be proud of it. But you must adapt it to the needs of the modern city. Tradition and modernity. The third path. And the student has found his way. He worked hard and it paid off. Professor Tessener made him his teaching assistant to help new students learn the Tessener way. And his students just won't shut up about the National Socialists. The leader thinks just like Professor Tessener, they say. But Professor Tessener doesn't like their leader. What is Albert Speer to think? Just come, hear him speak, say his students. And there's Speer, in a crowded room. Lots of his professors from the university are there too. Nazis are mainstream now. And no wonder, the golden age is over. If there ever was one, it was built on sand. The US economy collapsed, the money dried up, and it all went down. And no more building in Berlin. Tout wants to go to Moscow. They said they'll be building there because they're building a perfect world. And Tout knows what a perfect world looks like. And what's a young architect like Speer to do? Get in line with the rest of us. 1/3 of the people are out of work. They're angry and their minds are rubble. And the Nazis promised them that they'll tear down the rental barracks and that they'll tear down the degenerate flat roofs and they'll build them a perfect world. And you hear that? It's the revolution. There will be wrecking balls, it seems. The generals are trembling. The Nazi guy's crazy, but 1/3 of the people voted for him. And of two evils, he's the lesser one. And so long, architects of the Republic. You built your utopias on the edges of Berlin, but it wasn't enough. The old city stayed the same, the city of stone where people live in rental barracks. You never built that city crown, a new place for the crowd to gather, a place to remind them of their highest thoughts, like how it's their right and responsibility to say what they think and to have a say in how they're governed. Well, you had your plans all right. You wanted to build a new street, from the train station to this Platz in front of the Reichstag building. This used to be Königsplatz, but you changed its name to Platz of the Republic. And you wanted to build new buildings here. Buildings for government. Buildings where those highest thoughts can be discussed and disputed, and then slowly, painstakingly, turned into paperwork. Paperwork that is the stuff of reality, mightier than 1,000 bulldozers. And who knows, maybe you would have built it. It takes time and lots of paperwork. But now it's too late. Adolf Hitler has just been sworn in as Chancellor here in front of Reichstag's very own windows. It makes it want to crawl out of this stone that keeps it standing so firmly in place. The only thing left is to burst into flames. "The commies set this building on fire," the new Chancellor screamed. "Make me your Führer, and I'll wipe the slate clean for real. I'll clear away the rubble from your minds and build a perfect world out of it." So what are you waiting for? You know who you are. Out, or into the bonfire. Brunner Taut just returned from Moscow, disappointed. They weren't going to build their world the way he drew it up. And now in Berlin they told him he was on the blacklist and he had to run for his life. He ended up in Turkey. His old friend, Martin Wagner, was already there. They stayed in touch until 1938, when Bruno Taut designed a platform for the coffin of Mustafa Ataturk, and a few months later died of an asthma attack. And no more color in Berlin. The city is in black and white again. And red, but these are the flags. And roofs, because Nazis are building all right. And building puts people to work, and it makes money. Some are even saying that the golden age has dawned. The Gagfach is building on the edge of the Grunewald forest. There used to be a roof war around here once, but the Führer brought roof peace. He gathered the warring housing associations together under the same roof, the roof of the party. And that was a very pitched roof indeed, just like the Gagfach always said it should be. So it's only right that the Gagfach gets to build the last roof. But these are not roofs for middle-class conservatives. These roofs are for the SS, the Nazi police that now policed everything. They were the new elite. And they wanted their own Siedlung in the forest, like only the Gagfach could build, with perfect German houses. Houses to remind them of the wisdom of their ancestors, how they learned to live on this soil and how this soil made them who they are. The kind of people better than any other people, destined to rule the world. And no, don't put separate gardens for everyone. Everything will be one big garden for the community, with a perfect house for all. Of course, this detached house is only for the highest ranks. Middle ranks can get a semi-detached house, and the lower ranks will get a house in a row. And those without children? We'll put them in apartments until they come to their senses and start growing the master race. It's the city that's messing people up. People are not having children in the city, even on the outskirts. Mein Führer, we have to get people back to the soil. We have to build them houses in the countryside, big houses with pitched roofs where the people can have lots of children for the Führer. The Führer yawns. His mind's too great to get excited about houses in the countryside. The Führer is making plans for an empire, like the Roman Empire, but much greater. So sure, people to the soil, peasant soldiers for the Führer. Dream your rural dreams. Romans did that too, but Romans also built roads, lots of roads to keep the empire together. So the Führer is going to build roads, the modern ones for cars, and factories to make cars, and cities to work in factories. Yes, Romans built cities. There's no Roman Empire without Rome. The Führer has Berlin, but he doesn't like it. But didn't the emperor find Rome a city of bricks and leave it a city of marble? Look, they're already chopping down linden trees in Unter den Linden, paving up the garden in front of Kaiser's old Schloss. Soon, they'll be wrecking balls. But don't worry, the Führer won't tear down Unter den Linden. The emperor builds his new forum next to the old one. The Führer is going to build his own street, much greater than Unter den Linden. Unter den Linden has the Brandenburg Gate. Führer Street will have a triumphal arch, the largest one ever built, 2 times the size of Napoleon's. The Führer sketched it up while he was in jail. The names of 2 million Germans who died in the war will be written on it. Behind this arch will be a new train station, the biggest in the world, and the new street, 120 meter wide, will go from the train station to Königsplatz in front of the Reichstag building. It's called Königsplatz again, but not for long. This will be Adolf Hitler Platz, a new city crown where the crowds will gather. Führer's new Schloss will be here, much bigger than Kaiser's. The Führer will come out on the balcony and the crowd will cheer. Turn around, crowd. The Führer will build you a pantheon to worship him. It will be the biggest building in the universe. All 200,000 of you will fit inside. And what about the Reichstag building, mein Führer? We tear it down. This is Albert Speer. Speer is in charge of rebuilding Berlin for the Führer. The Führer fired everybody else because they kept asking about the money and the paperwork. This is why the Republic never built their city crown. Cowards. But Speer knew better. He knew how to give the Führer what he wanted. He said, "Mein Führer, let's not put iron in our buildings. It's so ugly when it rusts. Let's build everything out of stone so that our buildings can be beautiful ruins in 1,000 years. Yes, like Roman ruins." Führer's eyes sparkled. Yes, we'll build everything out of stone. Besides, we need iron for other things, like weapons. Shh. And we can always get stone. The SS just set up a concentration camp near a quarry. They can put the enemies of the state to good use. After all, Rome wasn't built by paying everyone to work. And don't tear down the Reichstag building. We'll make it watch. Everything else, tear it down now. But these are people's homes you're tearing down. Well, they can move into Jewish apartments. There are lots of empty ones now. Not enough for everyone, though. But don't worry, Speer thought about the people. He extended Führer Street south to build housing along it. It's going to be big houses with pitched roofs for everyone. Nah, it's going to be apartments for you people. Blocks and blocks of new apartments along that southern extension of Führer's Triumphal Street behind the giant train station. They already built some, just a few blocks for now. Big blocks with 5-story apartment buildings along the edges. Don't you dare say that they're like the rental barracks, and don't you dare complain that you've got windows only on one side, and that your kitchen's in the living room, and that you have no balcony. The Führer thought of you. Look, they didn't build this building all around the block. They left these gaps so that when the bombs fall, the air pressure can escape and your apartments won't all explode. When the bombs fall? What did you think? You can't build the Triumphal Arch without triumph. Turn on your radios. It's the first day of September, 1939. You're going to war. And there's this new thing now. Airplanes throwing bombs on cities. You hear the siren and you run to the U-Bahn station and down to the air raid shelter. And there you all crowd together and wait for the strikes. Is it a bomb? Or is it Speer tearing down buildings for Führer Street? Meanwhile, the Führer is safe in his bunker. We're going east, he says, to conquer the Untermenschen and take them as slaves, to build city crowns for the Führer. And you've gotten used to it by now. You hear the siren, you go down and chat with your neighbors, and then it strikes, and your heart skips a beat. It might be your house. Meanwhile, in Speer's office, they say, "Great, they're helping us with demolitions." And then it strikes again, and the Führer says, "This time, We fight to the last man. And you in the shelter? You don't want to die. And you can hear them coming, street by street. Bang, bang, bang to eternity, bang. The Führer blew his brains out in the bunker. Bang. And it's quiet at the air raid shelter. You make your way out, but it's so dark up here, it might as well be underground. Your mind is rubble, so don't think. Look, the city around you is rubble as well, torn down at last. The only thing left is to roll up your sleeves and start clearing it away, brick by brick.